ってきた。危ない。
Hello, horror community. Like many of you, I'm deeply fascinated by the world of horror. From chilling movies and haunting books to eerie stories that send shivers down your spine, I can't get enough of it. Tonight, I invite you to join me as we dive into another terrifying experience you won't forget. My name is Tom Avery, and at 47 I was old enough to know better than to take a night run across the mountains with a brand new, to me, rig. But I needed the miles, and the dispatcher in Reno dangled a quick load westbound over the Sierra Nevada, Reno to a warehouse outside Sacramento, 2 pallets of medical supplies, light as a feather compared to the steel I usually hauled. 8 hours, he said. Easy money, he said. By 2:30 a.m., easy money had turned into a cold, empty turnout just shy of Donner Summit, elevation a little over 7,200 feet, the wind soaring past the sleeper at maybe 20 miles per hour, the dash thermometer stuck at 28 degrees Fahrenheit, and my steering wheel stiff as an iron gate. The first hint of trouble was small, little pulses in the brakes, a stubborn tug in the wheel as if the road wanted me more than I wanted it. Then the tug became a wrench. I eased onto the shoulder, eased again, fighting the lock in the column. My right hand found the blinker out of habit, though there wasn't another set of headlights in sight. I rolled into the turnout at mile 174, set the brakes, and listened to the engine idle down to a sour, uncertain hum. Help, the dispatcher told me on the phone, would be after sunrise. The shop he trusted on the California side didn't send anyone up the hill at night, not in shoulder season when black ice liked to take its chances with men and machines. Get some sleep, Tom, he said. We'll have a guy there by 8. Sleep. Sure. I killed the headlights but left the running lights glowing red against the snowbanks crusted along the shoulder. I crawled into the sleeper, boots off, jacket still on. The mattress had that new rig smell that's really just old dust pretending to be clean. I pulled the curtain half closed, stared at nothing, and tried that old trucker trick of counting breaths. Somewhere between breath 60 and breath 90, a whistle sounded outside. A single note. Then another, as if someone were testing a tune. 3 notes, then 4, not music, just the idea of it. I held my breath. The wind made other sounds, low moans at the door seals, a dry clatter under the frame, but this was human, or else human-made. Close, too, no farther than the mirror arms. I slid forward and peeled the curtain with 2 fingers. The side mirror, black as a TV with no signal, showed exactly what you'd expect at 2:40 a.m., wind, dark, the red of my own lights on dull snow. Nothing else. The whistle came again. This time it answered itself, a higher echo, like 2 people trading notes. I clicked on the dome light. The bright little island of the cab did nothing to the sea of dark outside, but it steadied my hands. I told myself it was wind in the railings, or the edge of the trailer door vibrating just so. Then I heard laughter. Faint. Children. Not the belly laugh of a kid at recess, but that thin, teasing titter that means we know something you don't. It came from the driver's side, then the passengers, then from right behind the sleeper, the sound bouncing around like it had learned the shape of my rig by heart. Nah, I said out loud. Nope. My voice was too loud, so I tried again, softer, like telling a skittish horse it's all right. Just the wind, kid. Just the wind. The truck shifted. Not a rock like a gust had slapped it, but a tilt, a shoulder-to-shoulder shove, as if 2 hands had leaned into the trailer wall and pushed. The mattress moved under me. A little coin of saliva pooled under my tongue that I had to swallow with care. The whistle again, longer now. A 5th note. A 6th. The laughter blotted out by it, or maybe folded into it, like the laugh had grown up into a human voice and was trying to sing. My mother used to say the Lord hears a prayer even when it's shoved through gritted teeth, so I tried a prayer. Not even a proper one. Just help. Just please. Something scraped along the trailer doors, a metal sound, like a bar or a hook dragged across paint. I pictured the rear seal catching and releasing, but the scrape moved up, then down, and finally it tapped, steady as a metronome. Tap. 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 As if someone had reached the back of my rig and started knocking. At the exact moment I thought my chest might split with the pressure of trying to breathe without making a sound, a set of headlights swung around the bend. A state plow, orange strobes flashing, rolled past at 35 miles per hour, pushing nothing but blacktop. The whistle cut off as clean as if a switch had been thrown. The tapping and the laughter went with it. I waited. 10 count. 50. 100. The plow's lights dwindled until the night was whole again. You'd think I'd sprint out there with my flashlight to prove the obvious, that one loose hinge can make a saint see shapes in the dark. I even opened the door and let the mountain air hit my face to prove I was braver than I felt. But my boots hit the running board and wouldn't go any farther. The cold had that don't be stupid bite to it, and anyway, whatever had been outside liked the night, and I wasn't about to bring it into the cab by pretending I was the boss of it. So I sat up behind the wheel, turned the key to run but not start, and watched the sweep of the gauges as if the truck's own heartbeat could steady mine. At some point, grey diluted the black beyond the windshield. Dawn is good medicine. The world got edges again, plowed berms, a torn garbage bag lodged in a sage bush, old tire marks frozen into faint ridges. I climbed down then, toes numb in my socks from the cold steel of the steps. No footprints in the drift, no boot marks, no little shoes. Along the rear doors, a few faint scratches in the dust and salt, nothing more than a cat or coyote could make with a lazy claw. But when I came back up the driver's side, I stopped so hard my knee barked the tank. On the chrome grab bar, right at shoulder height, there were prints. Not full hands. Just the top halves of fingers, 4 on one side, 3 on the other, like whoever reached for the bar was too small to get a grip. The prints weren't in dirt. They were in clean ovals and smears where the frost had rubbed away and left bare metal. I told myself I brushed them, somehow, getting out. But my gloves were still in my pocket, and the shape was wrong for me, and my stomach knew I was lying to my head. The roadside mechanic finally showed at 8:15 a.m., a kid not long out of tech school with cheeks raw from the cold and a good morning that knew better than to ask about my face. He checked the power steering belt. Fine. Fluid. Fine. Pitman arm. Fine. In the end he tightened the U-bolts on a loose steering box and declared I'd been getting ghost shimmies from the play in the column. His word, ghost. He grinned when he said it. I didn't. 2 hours later, rolling down the west slope, I reached to adjust the climate controls and felt something cold and round under the lip of the dash. I fished it out with the tips of my fingers. A tin whistle, one of those dime store things shaped like a skinny little flute, indented, the paint worn to bare metal where a thumb would rest. I had never seen it. It had not been in this truck last night. Or any other night. I pulled the window down and threw it as hard as I could into the sunlight. That should have been the end of it. 3 weeks later I took a night run eastbound on I-40 across the Great Smoky Mountains, Knoxville to Asheville, empty trailer, easy roll. Moonlight rode the top of the ridges like a second road. The drop into the Pigeon River Gorge can scare a rookie silly, but I knew my lines, kept my speed at 45 miles per hour, the engine brake low, the rig tucked in and cooperative. I hadn't thought about Donna for a day or two. I'd force myself not to. A man who drives for a living can't let the road fill with ghosts or he'll spend his nights white-knuckled, seeing faces in every reflector. That was my theory. At 2:40 a.m., I know the time, because it's a number that won't leave me alone, the cab light flickered once. The dash dimmed and brightened. Not a failure, a blink, like something passing in front of the sun and then moving on. The whistle came next. Not distant this time. Inside. A thin pipe of sound from behind me, where my jacket hung on the hook. I didn't turn. I looked straight ahead into the ribbon of headlights unwinding toward the next curve and said, "No, just that." A flat word meant for a dog or a toddler. "No." The whistle answered with a bright little scale, 6 notes climbing into the dark. Then laughter, not children now, but male voices, grown and clever and mean, not so much laughing as enjoying the idea that I might be afraid. My right mirror caught motion. Shadows where there were no shadows, as if shapes had peeled off the rock wall and were drifting toward the lane. 1, 2, 3. Narrow. Tall. Men standing in the road where no men had any business being, not at this hour and not in that blind curve. I tapped the brakes to tuck the trailer in and breathed, 1, 2, and tapped again. The shapes remained. Headlights from a car behind me tipped into the curve and painted their edges a sick chalk gray. I braked harder. The trailer tried to pass the cab. Jackknife. I hauled the wheel, fought the drift, felt the tires snapping at traction like a gator at a bottle. The ABS bucked under my boot. The shape slid sideways and vanished, like mist torn by wind. The car behind me went wide, then wider, its driver doing the smart thing, the selfish thing, choosing his own life over mine and passing on the right. He cut back in too tight and clipped my front fender, a light pop of metal on metal that would look like a tap on paper but felt in my hands like a bell rung inside the steering column. He fishtailed, caught himself, and took off like the devil was dragging on his bumper. I coasted onto the shoulder, lungs laboring. Emergency flashes. Hands on the wheel until I could feel the blood drain out of them and the sting return. Nobody in the road. Nobody in the cab but me. And the whistle. Not sounding now. Waiting. A trooper came within 10 minutes, unusual for the hour, lucky for me, and lit up the world with blues that made the gorge look like a frozen ocean. He took my info, peered at the scratch on the fender, asked if I'd seen the other driver's plate. I shook my head. He shook his. He told me there'd been accidents, always accidents, on this stretch since before he was born. You see things, you think you see things, he said, not unkind. Fog, moonlight, nerves. Don't let the mountain get in your head. The company reviewed my dashcam. To my eye it showed exactly what I'd lived, 3 tall shapes stepping out of the dark. To everyone else's eye it showed empty road and an old driver who braked hard for nothing and caused a near miss. They suspended me pending review. Insurance wanted a statement. The shop wanted the rig for a day to check the brake controller and the steering. I gathered my handful of things from the cab while the shop foreman watched from his clipboard kingdom. Jacket, logbook, extra socks. My hand went under the driver's seat to see what junk had migrated there. My fingers closed on cold tin. I didn't pull it out, not with the foreman looking. I put it in my pocket, walked to my pickup, and sat there with the door open until the smell of grease and hot brake pads flooded the cab enough to make me feel less alone. When I finally held it in the light, it was the same tin whistle, dent and all. I know how that sounds. The world is choked with objects that look like one another. And yet the thumbwear was the same, smooth in the same crescent, as if the same small hand had loved it into that shape. I took it home. Not because I wanted it, but because I didn't want anyone else to have it. I put it on the workbench beside the pliers and the coffee can full of miscellaneous screws. At 2:40 a.m., my smoke detector chirped once and then died, battery fine. The water heater clunked. The house made all the noises a house makes when it remembers who lives there. The whistle lay where I'd left it, a nothing object, mute. I slept, finally, and dreamed something simple and cruel, little hand smearing frost off a grab bar, a boy learning how to climb into a cab that was never meant for him, the boy's father on the ground where I could not see him, telling him, don't, and the boy whistling because whistling is what you do when you're afraid and want to sound brave. The next evening, a man from insurance called to tell me the footage conclusively showed no obstruction in the roadway and recommended driver retraining if my employer kept me on. Then he said something meant to be comforting, "We've seen a lot worse, Mr. Avery." He had no idea how small I felt, how simple a thing could peel the paint off a man's courage. I sold the rig at a loss the next week. I told myself it was a financial decision. Fuel and rates. Margins too thin. I told my daughter I'd be home more. She smiled the way adult kids smile when they're trying to be happy for you and scared for you at the same time. On my last night with the truck, before the buyer arrived, I drove it 10 miles out of town to the old gravel lot where kids practice learning a clutch. Clear sky, 55 degrees Fahrenheit, crickets stitching the edges of the dark. I parked in the center of the lot and cut the engine. "Listen," I said to the empty seat. "I'm sorry I don't know your name." I'd expected the wind and the insects and the creak of cooling metal. I didn't expect an answer. What I got was this, the presence as small and specific as a warm hand resting on mine for a heartbeat. Then nothing. Not mercy. Not forgiveness. Just the confirmation that something had happened to me on Donna that didn't care whether I believed in it. I took the whistle from my pocket and placed it on the seat. I didn't throw it this time. I didn't even put it somewhere silly like a trash can where I could pretend I'd taken control. I left it where some future owner might find it, or not. Back home, I crawled into bed like a man carrying a weight he can't name. At 2:40 a.m., a single note floated up the hallway, bright, small, lonely, and faded before I could be sure it had been there at all. I lay awake until the first bird stitched a line of sound across the dark and the world accepted morning again. Then I got up, made coffee strong enough to hold a spoon upright, and looked at my hands to see if they were shaking. They were steady. That's the worst part, maybe. The world goes on. The roads still need driving. The mountains still sit where they were put. Fear fades in the daylight and comes back at night like a debt you thought you paid. You learn to live with it. You learn not to tell people, because most of them will be kind but useless, and a few will laugh, and a few will want it to be true in a way that makes you feel like a story instead of a man. The second incident on I-40 cost me my job for a while, a chunk of savings, and the last little bit of belief that I was the kind of man who couldn't be rattled. That's a lot to pay for something you can't write up in a report. It isn't fair. Mountains and ghosts don't care about fair. I tell you this so you'll know, if you ever find yourself at 2:40 a.m., in a place too quiet for comfort, and you hear a whistle where no whistle belongs, you don't owe courage to anyone. Lock your doors. Say your prayer if you've got one. Wait for the light. And if the light comes and you see no footprints, only bare metal where frost used to be, understand that some things you carry don't fit on a scale. They ride along at 75 miles per hour, 3 feet behind your seat, and sometimes they hop over the mountains and catch you on the other side. Let's continue. Hello, horror community. My name is Daniel Moore, and I've been a long-haul truck driver for nearly 15 years. I'm 39 now, and I've seen my fair share of lonely roads across the United States. But nothing I ever witnessed compares to what I'm about to tell you. It all started with a dream. For weeks, almost every night, I dreamed I was driving along a dark stretch of highway that cut through a forest in Northern California, not far from the edge of the Shasta Trinity National Forest. On both sides of the road, tall pines stood like black walls, and in the distance I could hear the wind rushing through the trees like a whispering crowd. In the dream, I always saw the same thing, a man standing at the shoulder of the highway, just where the asphalt curved near the cliffs. He wasn't a stranger. It was an old friend, Ethan, someone I hadn't spoken to since high school. We'd gone separate ways, and I hadn't thought of him in years. In the dream, Ethan stood perfectly still, watching my truck approach. I always slowed down, pulling toward the shoulder as if to stop for him. But just as my rig came to a halt, I jolted awake in bed, sweating, my heart beating hard enough to shake the mattress. The nightmare repeated almost every night for 2 months. Same road, same trees, same man, same face, and always the same sudden awakening before I could say a word. At first, I brushed it off as coincidence, maybe my subconscious pulling up a memory of Ethan for no reason. But the repetition ate at me. Why him? Why there? Why now? One night, after another delivery, I found myself routed through that very forest road, a place I'd driven 100 times before. The moment I recognized the curve from my dream, my throat tightened. The clock read 12:17 a.m., the same time I always saw in the dream before waking. And then I saw him. Ethan. standing by the shoulder of the road, just where the pines broke open to a cliff drop. Same posture. Same green jacket I remembered from high school. I nearly lost control of the wheel. My rig swerved before I yanked it straight, my knuckles white against the steering wheel. I hit the brakes and rolled to a stop about 50 feet ahead of where he stood. My mirrors caught him clearly, tall, still, illuminated by my taillights. My gut screamed at me not to get out. My whole body locked into a state of pure animal alert. I sat frozen, watching the side mirror. Ethan raised his hand slowly, as if waving, or maybe warning me. Then, without a word, he turned and walked straight into the trees, vanishing into the dark. I floored the accelerator and didn't stop until I was 20 miles past the forest. 2 days later, a mutual acquaintance from high school sent me a message online. I hadn't spoken to him in years, but he told me something that made my blood run cold. Ethan had died in a car accident. Almost 3 months earlier. On that very stretch of highway. His vehicle had gone over the edge of the cliff. I didn't sleep that night. Because the timeline matched exactly. The dreams had started when Ethan was in a coma after the wreck. And the night I saw him in the flesh. That was the same day he finally passed away. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. About a month later, I was sent on another late-night delivery, this time across Oregon's Umpqua National Forest. The road was tighter, steeper, with blind turns carved through endless pines. Around 1 a.m., my headlights caught a shape standing in the road. Not a deer. Not a fallen tree. A man. My stomach dropped. I slammed the brakes, trailer rattling behind me. When the truck screeched to a halt, the figure was gone. But my side mirror caught movement, something pale darting between the tree trunks. I locked the doors, heart pounding. The cab suddenly felt too small, too thin, too vulnerable. The silence around me swelled until I thought I'd go insane. And then came the knock. From the back of the trailer. 3 sharp bangs. Exactly like fists pounding on metal, demanding to be let out. I couldn't breathe. My foot twitched toward the clutch, but I couldn't make myself move. Another 3 bangs. Louder. Closer. Finally, I slammed the truck into gear and tore down the road, engine screaming, my trailer swaying dangerously behind me. The knocking followed, bang, 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 until I reached the highway junction and the forest broke open. Only then did the sound stop. When I pulled into the next truck stop, I forced myself to check the trailer. The lock was intact. No dents. No marks. Nothing at all. But in the thin coat of dust on the rear doors, a word had been drawn with a fingertip. Why? I didn't sleep that night either. And every time I drive through forests now, I can't shake the feeling that Ethan, or whatever followed him, still waits for me at the side of the road, ready to climb back inside my dreams. Hello to the channel's community. Just like you, I am a fan of the horror genre. I've always enjoyed watching movies, reading books, listening to stories, and consuming any kind of content in this genre. My name is Mark Ellison, and this story isn't about me, it's about my father. He's been a truck driver for nearly 30 years, hauling freight across the United States. He always told us he started out just to make ends meet, to put food on the table for me and my sister, but over time he came to love the road. It became part of him. My father's always been the type of man who laughs at ghost stories. He's faced breakdowns in the middle of snowstorms, robberies at truck stops, and worse. But what he experienced in 2018 on Route 54 in New Mexico was the only time I ever saw him admit something had shaken him to the core. That night he was hauling a load eastbound, heading toward Texas. It was late, around 11:30 p.m., when he saw them. 2 figures on the shoulder of the highway. A man and a woman. They looked frantic, waving their arms as if begging for help. He slowed down, instincts torn between fear and compassion. These days, you never know who might be setting you up. But then he saw something that made his heart twist. Between the two adults stood a small child, maybe 5 or 6 years old. That's what made him pull over. He eased the rig onto the gravel shoulder, hazard lights flashing, and climbed down from the cab. The night air was cool, filled with the endless hum of desert wind. But when his boots hit the ground, he froze. The man and woman were gone. All that stood there, illuminated by his truck's headlights, was the boy. A thin little kid in dirty jeans, his face pale, his eyes wide and hollow. My father asked where his parents were, his voice trembling. The boy lifted his head, staring right into my father's eyes. "They left me," he whispered. "The bad people shot them. They left me here." My father's throat closed. He wanted to cry but forced himself to stay calm. He took a step closer, crouching so he wouldn't scare the child. That's when he noticed something was wrong. The boy's shadow didn't match the angle of the headlights. It stretched too far, too wide, crawling along the gravel shoulder like black fingers reaching toward the cab of the truck. And then the boy smiled. It wasn't the smile of a child, it was too sharp, too knowing. The kind of smile that doesn't belong on a young face. "You're not going to leave me," the boy said. His voice sounded deeper than before, layered, like more than one person was speaking. "You're going to take me with you." My father stumbled back toward the cab, fumbling for the door handle. The boy's eyes glowed faintly in the red of the taillights, and his shadow swelled across the side of the trailer like it was trying to crawl inside. He slammed the door shut, locked it, and started the engine. His hands shook so badly he could hardly shift gears, but somehow the rig lurched forward. He pressed the accelerator, the truck roaring down the empty stretch of highway. For a few seconds, he thought he was free. But then came the sound. Knocking. From inside the trailer. Slow, deliberate bangs against the cargo doors, as if fists were pounding to get out. He kept driving, sweat pouring down his face, eyes darting to the mirrors. And that's when he saw it, the boy. Not on the road anymore, but running alongside the truck, impossibly fast, his legs blurring like shadows. His pale face tilted up toward the cab, still smiling, still whispering words my father swears he could hear in his head, "You're not going to leave me." At 60 miles per hour, the boy was still there. At 70, he was still there. Finally, near Clovis, the shadow faded, the knocking stopped, and the boy was gone. When my father delivered the load the next morning, the warehouse workers swore the trailer was sealed tight, untouched since he left. But on the inside of the doors, etched deep into the metal, were tiny handprints, dozens of them, pressed into the steel like clay. My father has never taken Route 54 at night again. And he never laughs at ghost stories anymore. The 3 stories remind us that fear often hides in uncertainty, whether it's a ghostly figure on a dark highway, a child who isn't what he seems, or a familiar face reappearing in dreams. In real life, the lesson isn't about the supernatural but about trust, instinct, and awareness. Always listen to your intuition, especially when something feels wrong. Stay cautious when traveling alone at night, keep your mind clear of fatigue, and respect the weight of past traumas that linger like ghosts. Most importantly, remember that vigilance and self-awareness are the best protections in an unpredictable world.